Elemental Mastery to both heal and proc Hyper Blooms, and you're building Xingqiu and Yelan for damage, you can build them a little bit less energy recharge than normal because they're both providing energy for each other. And overall, the team's single target damage is just absolutely off the chart. It doesn't have to be run exactly like this. You can swap out either Xingqiu or Yelan for a great number of characters. You can swap one of them out for Alhaitham. You can swap one of them out for Fischl. You can swap one of them out for Zhongli if you just want a little bit more comfort. And if you do Zhongli, you can more easily get away with Raiden. You can swap Kuki for Raiden and either play with lower defensive utility and slightly higher damage, or you can run Nahida on prototype Amber, or do the aforementioned Zhongli. You can also add Furina to the team. He'll buff Yelan's and Nahida's damage. Kuki's healing isn't quite enough to max out Furina's stack, so you can give Nahida prototype Amber or just take the L. Either one work. The L for her stacks, I mean. You can also do Nuvalette Hyper Bloom, in which case Raiden is likely the better choice because although she doesn't give the healing, she allows you to be further away from the enemies, so allows Novalette to play to his strengths a little bit more, but both work totally fine. You can use Furina or use someone else like Fischl or even Kazuha or even Baiju or again Zhongli. You could use Dea. Hyper Bloom is just basically infinitely flexible. The 3-man core is ridiculous. So like if we go back to Yelan, you can basically just replace the last slot with anybody. So whether this one's Raiden or Kuki, and just the last slot, you know, you can use Wanderer, you can use Ganyu for what people call a Hyper Frid, you could use Kazuha for grouping or something. I'm not saying it's optimal, I'm just saying you can use Yaimiko, and this turns it into a Quick Bloom team. So we can talk about Quick Bloom. It's really just Hyper Bloom, but you're also getting some quicken reactions. So Yaimiko, Sino. For Sino, you'll probably want to switch. You ideally for Sino want to use Furina and someone like Baiju, or you can use Alhaitham Quick Bloom. It's literally impossible to talk about all of the options. What else? You can do Kokomi. This is just one example of a Kokomi Hyper Bloom team. There's many variations that you can do. Basically, you can do anything you want as long as you have some sort of electro character that's built on Elemental Mastery, or at least has enough Elemental Mastery to get lots of Hyper Blooms. If you can also use an electro character that is built for damage but just has a lot of Elemental Mastery built in, and they get buffed with Nahida, so that's the case for someone like Sino or Keqing or Yaimiko for a Quick Bloom team. And so as long as you have your Electro and your Dendro character, you want to do a Hydro character next. So Ayato, Novalette, Furina, Kokomi, Yelan, Xingqiu, even Candace, even Barbara, and then the final slot can be literally your favorite character or anything. And so why Nahida, right? You can use any Dendro technically for this slot, but Nahida's just the best because she provides so much Dendro application that you're just going to be maximizing the amount of blooms that you're going to be getting in Hyper Bloom, the main form of damage in a Hyper Bloom team. So Nahida's the best. The other advantage of this team is just has such a high floor. It performs very, very well at a baseline no matter what you're doing. And you can also use Nahida on field or off field on the team. So it's just so flexible. Let me know your favorite Hyper Bloom teams down below. One new Hyper Bloom team that I guess I'll give a little bit of a shout out to is a Tighnari Hyper Bloom team, which you previously couldn't do because there was no off-field Hydro application until Furina. That didn't require normal attack to give a lot of Hydro, so that's pretty cool. But basically, you know, the only thing stopping you is your imagination to building your own Hyper Bloom team. So if you want to build a Hyper Bloom team, I do highly recommend getting Nahida for it. She's a huge upgrade to not having Hyper Bloom. You can run Hyper Bloom without her. You can do double Dendro and use 4-star Dendro or Alhaitham, or I think Baiju is probably the closest to a true Hyper Bloom replacement because him as an on-field driver for a Hyper Bloom team actually works really well. So I'd say the only time you can get away with not using Nahida as a Hyper Bloom team and not feel like a big downgrade is by using on-field Baiju, and that has the advantage of not needing to run Kuki, so you can run Raiden and she can buff your other characters. It is definitely worse, but it is arguably more comfy. His range isn't that great, but Nahida's range wasn't crazy to begin with, and with his shield and interruption resistance, it does make him, in my opinion, overall more comfy. So, but even still, because I find the defensive utility from Kuki plenty good enough, I tend to prefer using Nahida as the driver just for the higher damage. And if you want more defensive utility, keeping Xingqiu on your team is a great idea because he does provide that resistance to interruption, which doesn't matter as much, and then more of a big deal is the damage reduction. Mitigating about 40% damage plus having Kuki healing you up overall makes the team pretty darn comfy to play. Next team is going to be Spread. This is just pure Dendro and Electro with the main goal to amplify Dendro damage. The two Spread DPSs that we have that are really worth using right now is Alhaitham and Tighnari, and Nahida is just super good, providing not only Dendro off-field Dendro energy, which both of them want, off-field damage, because that's the other pro of Nahida that I forgot to mention, is she provides a lot of energy, but she provides really good damage, especially in AoE, but single target is solid too, and she also buffs the on-field character based on Elemental Mastery. She's not required for this team. You can use Baiju, you can use Yao Yao, you can use someone else, but again, she generally is considered the ceiling for Spread teams. And then you'll have one defensive utility slot, often Kuki's chosen. She can hold the Sapwood Blade and the Instructor's Artifact set to buff your on-field character, but Zhongli is also a really good choice, buffing both Electro, well not buffing, but providing resistance shred for both Electro and Dendro reactions. Dendro damage also can hold the Instructor's Artifact set, and he can either hold Fav or the Sapwood Spear, whatever the Inazuma Craftable Spear is. For your Electro slot, there's a bunch of options. You can use Yaimiko, Fischl, Lisa, or Beidou. Beidou being worth using, especially in multi-target scenarios, especially if there's two stationary targets. Beidou can be really, really powerful here. Highly more recommended with Kuki, I think, to provide some extra Electro energy. I actually like Lisa in this slot a fair bit, much more than I thought I was going to. If you have high Constellation Lisa, even better, but she works totally fine at C0. Just make sure you build enough energy and use her full hold skill to generate enough energy. Fischl solid for single target, and Yaimiko fits here. I think is generally considered the ceiling, but it's not really that much higher than the other option that it really matters too much. But yeah, Spread, great team for Nahida. You can do Spread, like Spread Nahida and use like double Electro kind of thing, but at this point you're not, like, this is if you want to focus on Nahida's damage, but at this point you're sort of better off running an animal unit somewhere so that you can swirl Electro, and then it makes it a quicken team. So we'll talk about that in a minute. Nilou Bloom teams is another one. Nilou doesn't need Nahida, but ever since I got Nahida. I've never not used Nahida. Every time I've tried, I've kind of hated it. So I highly recommend using Nahida on your Nilu teams if you want to pop off with Nilu. Nahida lets you do some pretty cool things. She lets you run with double Hydro, and then you can use Nahida as an on-field character. I like running Xingqiu and Yulan or Furina on this team to help with single target damage, but you can also do something like Baiju and Ayato, or Baiju and Furina, and you're using Baiju as the on-fielder. You can use Nuvolette. Candace and Yao Yao is one of my favorites for AoE. They're using Yao Yao on field with her polearm infused by Candace. You can basically just mix match Dendro and Hydro characters. You want to just make sure that you always have Nahida's skill applied and have enough Hydro and Dendro so that you're having lots of reactions. The only thing you'd want to make sure you don't do is have like double Hydro and then not use Nahida on field, because then you won't, if you use like Kokomi on field, you're going to run out of Dendro application because Hydro is going to overtake the Dendro skill, and the skill only applies Dendro when a Dendro reaction happens, so the reactions will slow down and stop. So if you want to use double Hydro in any variation, or triple Hydro, sorry, I'm thinking of double Hydro without not including Nilu, but triple Hydro including Nilu, you want to make sure you're using Nahida on field. Next is Burgeon. Burgeon is basically Nilu. Like, it's good in all the situations that Nilu is good in. The only difference is you have to be a bit more cognizant over what reactions are happening, that you don't make like burning happen, for example. This is usually my favorite Burgeon team, but there's so many different variations. Using Baiju allows you to not have to worry so much about dying from burning, which is really nice. You can also use an on-field pyro character like Klee, one of the highest Burgeon damaging teams that we have. You can use Yanfei. Any pyro character that provides pyro in AoE can work well.